people across the world have heard with profound amazement of the uprising of common people against the powerful Tsar Empire in a bloody revolution. The common people of Russia trampled the powerful Tsars to establish self-rule and proceeded to install a socialistic republic. At the end of the long 4 years of World War I, war-weary people were relieved a bit. Though India did not suffer the direct brunt of the war, it was economically impacted, and the reason was because India was then under British rule. Even though the British had won, the economy of the empire was severely crippled. In September 1919, a devastating cyclone had hit East Bengal and rendered a lot of people homeless. There were hardly any families that were not impacted by the destructive cyclone. Local people say that such a cyclone had never happened earlier, hence, people of East Bengal use the event, the cyclone of 26, as a time reference. Who could have ever predicted that World War I would come to an end? At least one nation would establish a socialistic republic, a devastating cyclone would blow over East Bengal, and after these, a great soul would take birth in Bengal who would wipe out the existing history and draft a new one in its place. However, it was known to some. Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Dev, made a prophecy to his maternal uncle, Sri Bishnudas Thakur, that he would be reborn as a nephew in Bishnudas's family after 13 generations and complete his unfinished work. This evidence is available in the chronicles authored by Bishnudas Thakur and his son-in-law, poet Gopinath Kanthabhoro. Furthermore, the knowledge about the prophecy had been passed on from one generation to another in Gopinath's family lineage. This had prompted Harnath Shiromani, the 10th descendant of Bishnudas, to announce publicly in the wedding of his son that Mahaprabhu would take birth in the womb of the daughter born through this marriage. That is why Ambiknath Vidyabhushan, the son of Harnath, would inquire for the presence of any supernatural powers in the newborn child of his daughters. However, when Sri Sri Thakur was born, the events were so evident with the presence of supernatural circumstances that it did not need any queries. The message of Thakur's supernatural birth reached the aged Ambiknath without fail. It was about 100 years ago when Trilanga Swami lived in Kashi. Everyone referred to and worshipped him as living Shiva, however, no one could easily access him. His supreme devotee was Loknath Brahmachari, who lived in the village of Barodi in the Dhaka district of Bangladesh. Ashwini Chatterjee, a close associate of Loknath Baba, served him by cooking meals for him and nursing him when he was unwell. Loknath Baba had affection for Ashwini as well. However, Ashwini Chatterjee could not stay for long with Loknath Baba, though he had always wanted to spend his entire life in the service of Loknath Baba. Loknath Baba summoned Ashwini one day and provided him half of the initiation mantra and said that after half a century a Purna Brahma avatar will appear and complete his initiation by providing the remaining half of the initiation mantra. He advised Ashwini Chatterjee to return home and lead a usual domestic life. Ashwini was sad on hearing this instruction from his guru and wept inconsolably. Loknath Baba also asked him to meet Trilanga Swami in Kashi and went on to say, "As you are a good cook, go and prepare Paramann, rice pudding, of Bangladesh fame for Baba, Trilanga Swami. He will be very happy." Ashwini left for Kashi on the same day via train. On reaching Kashi station, he found Trilanga Swami waiting for him on the platform. Ashwini was spellbound and asked him, "Dadu, how did you know I was coming?" Trilanga Swami retorted, "Loknath had informed me." Ashwini could not fathom how Loknath Baba informed Trilanga Swami and remained bewildered. Later, Ashwini took permission from Trilanga Swami and prepared the rice pudding using 2 more of milk. Trilanga Swami started saving the delicious rice pudding, and on seeing that the amount getting almost finished, Ashwini requested Trilanga Swami to leave a bit as prasad for them. Trilanga Swami smiled and left a bit for the devotees as prasad. Local devotees were surprised to see the amicable relationship of Trilanga Swami with Ashwini and asked the reason for it. Ashwini replied, "This is not because of him but because of Loknath Baba who has sent him here." Ashwini spent the night with Trilanga Swami under a tree. Next day he took leave from Trilanga Swami and left for his home. Pleased with Ashwini's services, Trilanga Swami bade him farewell and said, "Don't worry, a Purno Brahma avatar will come half a century later, and he will be your guru." Hearing this from Trilanga Swami, Ashwini was reassured, and he was at peace with himself. On his return, he related everything to Loknath Baba, then took his leave to start his domestic life. Among the devotees who visited Loknath Baba at that time were people like Jogesh Chaudhary from Arehazar village, Lalit Sadhu from Dhaka, and many more. Loknath Brahmachari did not give the initiation mantra to Jogesh Chaudhary. Instead, he gave him a saffron-colored cloth and said, "A Purno Brahma avatar is coming. You will meet him after half a century. He will ask you for this saffron cloth and will ask you to meet him wearing this saffron cloth. He will be your guru." With time, Jogesh Chaudhary graduated with a BA. At that time, he was the first and only graduate within a span of 20 to 25 villages. He made a name for himself as a teacher and served as headmaster for a long time. Loknath Baba had told Lalit Sadhu, "You also need not worry. You would be blessed by Purno Brahma avatar as well." There were many saints and seers who had prior information about the arrival of the Purno Brahma avatar in coming years. Prabhu Jagbandhu, Bijoy Krishna Goswami, Bhamakyapa, and other saints and seers had information about the arrival of Purno Brahma avatar in coming days. A great yogi, Adityanath Baba, who lived in the Himalayas, remained invisible to most of his devotees. Very few had the privilege of meeting him. A few years before the birth of Sri Sri Thakur, he professed that time has arrived for a Purno Brahma avatar to appear, and he will be born in Bengal. He will conduct his work in a hidden manner. People will not be able to identify him. He will initiate a series of demolitions of wrong practices and establish a new order of peace and harmony. At the end, he will reveal himself as the Lord, Supreme Truth, Consciousness, and Bliss, Satchidananda. Only a few rishis, elevated souls, and some close associates will be able to truly recognize him. There is an uncanny resemblance of the prophecy of Adityanath Baba with the life of Thakur. He was born with powers of Ashta Siddhi and, through multiple illustrations from a very tender age, had amazed the people around him. It is extremely rare to find sages with Anima Siddhi. Yogi Trilanga Swami had applied Anima Shakti 5 to 6 times, however, Sri Sri Thakur in his childhood had displayed the power of Anima Shakti 5 to 6 times within a night. Anima was easy for him. Not only himself, but he also took a few devotees and, applying Anima and Vyapti Shaktis, went and stayed in faraway places for a few days. His physical body could be at one place while his spiritual incarnation would be somewhere else, and both bodies could be working simultaneously and independently at two locations. This he could do with ease. In two distant places, photos have been taken simultaneously. It is not prudent to speak about the supernatural powers, as while only a few people from Bengal may have experienced the extraordinary, numerous people have not experienced it at all, and hence may not agree with it. Even if all people from India agree, people from another country, say China, may not agree to it. Hence, it is desirable to profile a great soul or sage by exploring her teachings and philosophy. From this evaluation perspective, you cannot but accept the unfathomable power of Sri Sri Thakur. Otherwise, how many children of 5 to 6 years of age can be found who can explain the complex aspects of the creation of the universe in lucid, simple language? In that tender age of 5 to 6 years, the comprehension ability itself is usually not developed. However, how could a child Thakur at that age could explain with ease about the complex aspects of the creation of the universe? Is it not amazing? This aspect indicated the unfathomable power of him. A few days prior to the birth of Thakur, his mother Charushila dreamt that a divine light was coming. While taking an afternoon nap during the Saraswati Puja, she saw Vishnu Avatar with Shankhachakra Gadapadma, who was telling her, "He is coming shortly." While dozing off on the day of Shiv Ratri, she saw Shiva, all with his dead locks, Jota, who also informed her about the imminent arrival of great divine talent. She heard the flute play of Sri Krishna on the day of Dol Purnima, who also informed her about the arrival of divine holiness shortly. Mother Charushila had heard about the prophecy of Mahaprabhu many times over, and now these three divine dreams filled her with an inexplicable joy. Again, a strange incident happened on the day of Mansha Puja. A yogi who looked like a lunatic suddenly appeared. Addressing Charushila, he said, "Oh, there. He is coming. I shall again come when he arrives." The yogi suddenly disappeared, like the way he had come abruptly, without giving anyone any chance to ask him any questions. Mahaprabhu's maternal uncle Bishnudas Thakur used to live in the village of Kaulipara, which was located under the Dhaka Bikrampur district. In his lineage, the 10th descendant of Bishnudas, Harnath Shiromani, was the first to leave Kaulipara. It was a strange incident. One day, when Harnath Shiromani's wife was going to light the lamp at the Tulsi altar after her usual morning bath, a splash of water erupted from a crack in the ground and wet her face. The intelligent lady immediately comprehended the ominous aspect of the incident and understood that the destructive Padma river had started flowing through cracks under the village, and soon the Kaulipara village would be engulfed by the mighty Padma river. It was a sprawling village with 8 post offices, 24 high schools, and police stations. All of this growing village will soon be swept away by Padma. She did not waste any time and informed everyone about the impending destruction. Soon the village was deserted. Whatever could be salvaged and carried was taken by the households as they crossed the limits of the risky zone. The sprawling village melted away into the Padma River within a few days. Harnath and family tried for a place to stay in multiple locations and finally started living in the village of Dogati. It was a small village with a single post office with limited services. There were no schools or police stations or flea markets. It had a small bazaar. A small creek, named Athrobanki, flowed through the middle of the village and merged with Padma. Thakur's mother, Charushila, was born in Dogati. Medinimandal was a village about 1 to 1.5 miles from Dogati. It was bigger than Dogati. It had a steamer station, a post office, and a bazaar but did not have schools or police stations. The destructive Padma River was in the south side of the village. A small steamer station was located in the banks of Padma. Mail steamers did not stop there, only mixed-purpose service and goods steamers stopped there. The house that was visible from the road, which originated from the steamer station and went beside the Kalirakhil Creek northwards just after crossing the market, was the famous Baidik Bari, also known as Baro Bhaiya Bari. From the name itself it is apparent that Pandits adept in Vedic practices lived there. The history of Baidik Bari is closely associated with the ruler of Bengal. Ballal Senator Ballal Sen had brought Vedic Brahmins from Kanyakubja, or Kannauj, near current Mathura and Banaras, to conduct rituals following Vedic principles. The story goes that there were aberrations by the Brahmins in the way of conducting ceremonies, and hence Ballal Sen brought another Vedic Brahman family for conducting the ceremonies following Vedic principles. They were renowned as the masters of conducting Vedic ceremonies in Dhaka Bikrampur, and they used to live in the famous Vedic Bari of Dhaka Bikrampur. At that time there lived quite a few Vedic Brahman families in East Bengal. Ballal Sen used to consider the Brahmins of Vedic Bari as the most competent practitioners of Vedic methods. It is well known that Ballal Sen wanted to give them a monthly stipend. However, they were against such charity and hence they were given some land, a few cattle, and other essential goods instead, all of which the ancestors of the Vedic family told to repay the equivalent loan amount to the last penny. Once, to test the Vedic family, Ballal Sen had offered, through a trusted intermediary, an amount of 500 rupees. To which the famous Brahman ancestor of the Vedic Bari refused to accept the gift and said that their livelihood is agriculture, dairy, conducting rituals and ceremonies, and learning and teaching Vedas. They will not be able to accept charity and deviate from their ideals. Balak Thakur's grandfather, Dino Bandhu Chakrabarti, was simple, amiable, and easily touched by the sorrow of others. After the morning prayers, his daily routine included going around the village, visiting the needy families, and helping them based on their specific needs to the best of his abilities. People used to say that he truly acted as per his name, Dino Bandhu, friend of the needy ones. With their hard work and discipline, they have made some wealth through the generations. However, they did not spend that wealth solely on themselves but used it to help the poor and the needy with food and clothes. Dinobandhu and later his son Bhagwati Thakur were so indifferent about their wealth that the corpus started dwindling with the progress of time. Bhagwati Thakur was totally indifferent to wealth to the extent that he used to return empty-handed after performing the rituals and the ceremonies at the client's place. Clients used to send some offerings and remunerations later to his home. He was so well respected for conducting ceremonies and rituals perfectly that if he were present, other Brahmins were afraid to conduct the rites. Once Ambika Nath Vidyabhushan, maternal uncle of Thakur, was conducting a ceremony with the help of local pandits. Bhagwati Thakur was on his way back after performing a ritualistic ceremony at a client's place in a nearby village and decided to pay a visit to his relative Ambika Nath. When Bhagwati Thakur arrived, the pandits, Ambika Nath and all who were present stood up to greet him, to which he was uneasy about their standing up and requested them to please sit down and carry on with their procedures. Ambika Nath had retorted, saying, "From a relationship perspective, you may be junior, however, we have to pay respect to your knowledge. As a master in ritualistic procedures, there is no one close to you. Hence, you have to accept our reverence for you." Even after receiving so much love and respect from people, Bhagwati Thakur remained simple, frank, and uncomplicated, very similar to all his ancestors. He always remained entranced in the study of the Vedas. From time to time the brothers used to meet and discuss the ritualistic procedures. While conducting the rituals, if even a little desire had arisen for anything in the form of alms, they would disclose about the same during these discussions and would pray so that such desires were not repeated in the future. The study and practice of rituals and ceremonies, the study of the scriptures, and teaching were their only engagements for them. In these acts there was no place for wants and desires. Whatever was offered in return for conducting rituals, such as produce from agriculture, etc., they considered it to be enough for their livelihood. In those meetings, Bhagwati Thakur used to ask his brothers, "Has anyone felt any desire for anything while conducting the puja?" If anyone did have such a feeling, he would own up and ask for forgiveness. There was such a unity among the 12 brothers that they did not get perturbed by any instigations. Once, a wife of one of the brothers who was new to the Vedic Bari, requested her husband to arrange for special food for her. The husband heard her. Then later during the meeting of the brothers, he related the request from his wife to all. From then on, the ladies of the house understood that each of their husbands was simple and frank and that it would make sense to maintain a simple and transparent relationship with them. Looking at the childlike nature of the brothers, all were in awe. Whoever heard about the story of that day was amazed. 4 of the brothers had sat for a board game, and 2 brothers were onlookers. Detecting a grave mistake in one of the moves, one brother lovingly banged the other. He shouted out on being hit. All of them were aged over 60. A few of the grandchildren went and complained about the incident to their grandmother. The old lady came and punished the brother who had hit by caning him, and he kept on saying, "Mother, sorry, I shall never repeat it." This childlike behavior was the identity of these 12 brothers. Bhagwati Thakur once touched the feet of the mother of Sobur Sarange to offer his pranam after Bijoya. This created quite a flutter among the Brahmins in the region. They assembled to hold a discussion session and summoned Bhagwati Thakur to it. They admonished him, saying, how could he do it? Being a stalwart in Vedic ritualistic procedures, touching a Muslim's feet in gratitude, what bigger digression from idealistic behavior could there be? They said, how could you stoop so low, being such a respected person? Your action has impacted our respect and stature in the society. Bhagwati Thakur had placed Sobur Sarange's mother as his own mother much earlier. To this Bhagwati Thakur said, touching the feet of a mother in gratitude can never be considered as anti-practice. Where at all is it mentioned that offering pranam to mother is anti-religion? If such a doctrine exists, I can never support it. Where at all does the question of respect and stature come in when offering gratitude to your mother? Brahmins soon understood that it is useless to bring up the reasons for Hindu and Muslim in this context, and hence, they had to accept the reasoning of Bhagwati Thakur. A few years later, Sobur Sarange's mother died. Bhagwati Thakur called Sobur Sarange and said that, you proceed with your rituals, and I shall do my rituals. This simple man was steadfast in what he believed. He remained in the ashauch for 11 days, shaved his head, and performed shraddha as per the ritualistic procedures. The Hindus observed but did not utter a single comment. Muslims complained to Sobur Sarange about it, who said that Bhagwati Thakur would do whatever he thought appropriate for the soul of his mother, and no one should have anything to say about it. Hearing this, Muslims also fell quiet. The servant of Vedic Bari, Durga Mohan, could never think of himself as a mere menial servant of Vedic Bari. He used to think as a member of the family, however, even he felt ashamed one day. Bhagwati Thakur had sent him for an errand related to rituals, and on return he had to accompany Bhagwati Thakur. In the meantime, Bhagwati Thakur had washed Durga Mohan's clothes and dried and ironed them so that he could wear them on his return. The students of the toll were utterly surprised and asked, Pandit Moshai, what are you doing? To this Bhagwati Thakur replied, Durga Mohan will accompany me soon. His clothes were not clean. Hence, I have washed them. The simple logic beats the students, and they could not say anything more. Durga Mohan was very ashamed that Bhagwati Thakur himself had washed, dried, and ironed his dirty clothes. That day Durga Mohan understood the greatness of Bhagwati Thakur's character and how he actually observed the equality of mankind. One day Bhagwati Thakur was splitting wooden logs with an axe, while wearing a short dhoti above his knees, when a gentleman arrived. He mistook Bhagwati Thakur as a servant and asked, Hey there, can you please tell me where I can find Bhagwati Thakur? He stopped and said, I am Bhagwati, to which the visitor fell to the ground and offered his pranam and said, That is why people say you are so great. Each of the 12 brothers was simple and frank, and they never used to take pride in the knowledge they possessed. Rather, they would always think of themselves as nothing superior or different from others. This not only commanded respect from the fellow people, but also they bestowed their love and affection for the brothers as well. They had less materialistic acumen, and hence they could not protect their ancestral wealth and assets. Slowly the quality of their living deteriorated. They had a despise for the non-Vedic language, which was a common attitude, and hence they did not learn English or get educated in English literature. There was privation in the household. So, ultimately, Surendra Chandra, father of Thakur, under the instruction of his mother, had to take up an office job at the Zmindar's accounting department and had to start living away from home. Bhagwati Thakur used to go to the village market to sell some of the clothing material obtained in return for his ritualistic services to make some money. Many people used to offer their gratitude as pranam. He remained unaffected by it. He accepted whatever money the people offered him in lieu of the clothing materials and never asked for a second time. He used to buy goods from the same market with the money he made by selling the clothing materials and return home. In his childhood, Thakur used to sometimes accompany his elder uncle Bhagwati Thakur to the village market.